where the IN-PLAN and PLAN4CET project will show us their approaches to build the local capacity to deliver integrated energy and climate plans. I'm Roberta D'Angiolella, working for ICP, and today I will drive you through the session of this event. I also invite you to use our hashtag on social media, LearnPlanAct26, so that we can make this event resonate also on the digital spheres. And now it's time for the first session of the day. I will guide you through all this session one by one. So let's start immediately with the first one, which is a short dive into the two projects who are having their final events today. So I introduce Simona Törsinar, Senior Project Manager at Regea, and also In-Plan Coordinator. And also I introduce Maider Arreri Oses, which is Industrial Engineer for the Navarra government and also Plan4CET Coordinator. So I give you the word.
Thank you, Roberta. So welcome everyone also from my side. As Roberta said, I'm the In-Plan coordinator, and I have an honor today to present the great things that we accomplished in In-Plan. But first, we would like to share a couple of words why we even decided to join forces with Plan4CET. So in general, both projects have the same mission, which is to empower local authorities to plan better, act faster, and deliver clean energy results. So In-Plan project is a project that focuses on integrating energy and climate measures into spatial planning, while Plan4CET focuses on strengthening the governance, capacities, and implementation. So together, both projects tell a full story of energy transition, which is to move from planning to implementation. And that is why we wanted to show you our results today and to actually showcases what has been done in actual countries. Thank you. Okay, so as I said, In-Plan has a clear objective, which was to integrate energy and climate measures into spatial planning. And also our second main goal was to empower and build up a capacity for local and regional governments in 5 regional countries, which I will mention later. But this was all done with developing core methodology of the project, which is called In-Plan Practice. There, our partner UAV developed a support structure for regional and local authorities for integrated spatial planning. And it's a sort of a cookbook which allows you to do integrated planning in a simple way with real data, great examples. And we also have a new edition, new update that we did last month, which focuses on financing mechanisms. So it's a great tool, which we will introduce later, and you will also be able to scan it, download it, and etc. So the project was set up, was implemented in 5 countries, in Sweden, Croatia, Romania, Italy, and Ireland. And we really have some nice impacts throughout this period. So in general, the project implemented overall around 50 spatial plans. Through the capacity building, we encouraged around 77 multipliers to spread the knowledge of In-Plan methodology and integrated spatial planning through 6 trained trainers. So we did quite a lot. Irene, please. And this is the In-Plan practice that I was mentioning, a handbook for integrated energy, climate, and spatial planning. A special part of it is also In-Plan checklist, which was developed and initiated by our Italian partners, which I will talk more about when coming to Italy. And now let's move to some initiatives that we actually made and success stories. First of them being City of Zagreb, which was a lighthouse in Croatia. Our work focused with working with local authorities and the Institute for Spatial Planning, and we had a great ambition from we had a great political will to introduce integrated spatial planning, and that resulted in a green urban plan. They introduced new green areas, provided limitations on fossil fuels in selected zones, and the plan was officially adopted last September. Our most successful pilot was in city of Karlovac, and their general urban plan and now includes ban on expansion of natural gas networks, and in new buildings there is a requirement for 100% of renewables and district heating. And also in their general urban plan they mentioned in-plan methodology and their work with Regea, so we are quite proud of that. Now we will move to Italy. As I said, Italian case is quite interesting for our project. They had several challenges when entering the project, such as fragmenting legislation, lack of binding instruments, limited resources, and a silo approach that they were dealing with. But they developed the in-plan checklist that I already mentioned. So this was not intended in the grant agreement of the in-plan project, but this allowed them to influence the local authorities better because they simplified in-plan practice into a sort of a checklist, which allowed them to actually support the spatial planners through a simple checklist, which allowed them to bring all of the relevant departments into one table. So when you enter the checklist, you can filter it by sectors, and then you can prioritize which measure is relevant for your area, and you have suggestions what to include into your integrated spatial planning. So this is all available online, and you can download it, fill it out, and have suggestions what to include in integrated spatial planning when it comes to your area. We move north to Sweden if the laptop allows. So Sweden also had several challenges when entering the project. There was no interdepartmental process for energy planning. They had some basic energy plans, but they were not horizontal, they were not connected, and there was not a clear process of spatial planning per se. So in-plan methodology and capacity building with Trollhättan allow them to set up a cross-functional and interdepartmental working group for energy. And also they included local energy company within the in-plan, and that resulted in development of a comprehensive plan and energy integrated plan. In Ireland, the initiative that we will show was their work with Donegal County Council, where Daniel and TEA supported Donegal with developing the mobility plan. Now their mobility plan is integrated and has more greenways. They have park and ride initiatives and integrated ticketing. We will move next to Romania and showcase their result with their lighthouse Alba Iulia. So Alba Iulia already had a strong baseline of energy and climate documents such as SECAP, an adaptation plan, and SAMP, but the challenge was that they had to overcome public acceptance of complex green measures. And Alba Iulia also took initiative to influence their tender book and implement in-plan methodology in using the measures that were already present in SECAP to integrate into their tender book for spatial planning. So here you can find out more about the project. You can scan the QR code that leads you to the in-plan practice, as well as to the checklist, which will allow you to have a better integrated spatial planning process. That's it from my side. And now I will give the floor to Maider.
Thank you, Simona. Thank you, Simona. So now let's see what Plan4CET has to offer us. Well, our main objective in Plan4CET was to help regions and municipalities in every step of the clean energy transition, that being the planning, monitoring, and implementation. In order to do so, we have three main goals, which was supporting governance, both horizontal and vertical improvements, also to implement, integrate, and cross-sectoral set planning, and finally, to help municipalities, giving them capacity and support. As you can see in this map, in a really small scale, you can see that the three main pilots, which have been implementing different actions regarding those lines. On the north, we can see Sweden, the region of Skåne. With the blue color, we can see Emilia-Romagna in Italy. And finally, we have Navarra in green color. As I have mentioned, the three pilots conducted different actions regarding those objectives, but the main idea is that each of us have tailored and adapted actions. So each of them conducted similar things, but according to the needs and priorities of the region. So let's see if we can what we have gotten during our project. This QR is our main repository, our main replication tool, which is the toolbox, which is available in our webpage, and it offers different relevant information we have gotten in the project. We have the deliverables, which is a collection on guides and resources regarding governance, implementation, and training. And also we have the specific training we have developed within the project, that being the transition expert, transition manager, and zero carbon community managers. Each of one is directed to a specific profile. Transition expert is a knowledge build directed to general audience. Transition manager, a specific course for political and technical staff working with energy and climate. And finally, zero carbon community managers, which is for anyone that wants to have an active role in energy communities. As I have mentioned before, go back, please. This material has been, you can find it in our toolbox three times, because each pilot has conducted each transition manager, transition expert, and zero carbon community managers courses. Well, let's see now our success stories very shortly. And simply put, I'm going to express or present to you three different initiatives, one per pilot. The first one is for Skåne. It's related to the transition manager course. They have a really interesting feedback from their course. So now they are going to do a replication together with Lund University. It has been reviewed and updated, and it shows the replication and the long-term continuity that these programs offer. The second example, Jeremy, please. The second example is related to Emilia-Romagna. Is the Renewable Energy Communities Parma 2030 Foundation. It is an excellent example of governance models for renewable energy communities. Instead of promoting individual energy communities, the community of Parma created a robust or stable governance body in order to promote them and coordinate them. So these three-level governance structures includes at the top the ones that funded this foundation, which are the Comune di Parma, the University Health and Research Center. At the second round, we have the board, which are in charge of the general coordination. And on the bottom, we have the configuration committees, which they are the key element because they are in continuous exchange with the members of the energy communities, and they help to shape regulation and finance priorities due to the first-hand insight they receive from the members. Additionally, Provincia de Parma joined in October 2025, and this has been a next step to provide this or include this foundation to open it to the full province. And it's been very valuable in order to help small municipalities to create these energy communities without having so much administration, because the foundation helps with this burden. So it's a perfect example on how institutionalized governance body can help to promote energy communities, which play a key role in this transition. As to Navarre, we have another example, which is a pilot participatory process that took place in 4 municipalities in order to understand the CCAPs and prioritize the actions. It involved 4 municipalities, 4 energy communities, 1 per municipality, and the local authorities and citizens of those municipalities. During the different sessions, first individually in each municipality, they prioritize or identify those actions that they wanted to achieve or they attacked, let's say. And in a final session, then stage their insights and their reflections. And it was also, they presented new local aids to them in order to help them implement those prioritized actions. So this is an example on how we can help small municipalities to implement their plans together with their neighbors. Please. I know we have said very little about us, also about what we have achieved, about what we have done, but there is a broad scale, a very broad, I don't know, topics that we work on. So I invite you to take a look to our deliverable 4.4, which is our third knowledge exchange book, where you will find more information and also a collection of best practices that might be interesting for you. And finally, I'm going to present to you our lessons learned. As to governance, we could say that communication is key. We have to improve first internal communication. We have to say what we are doing. And for that, interdepartmental working groups or multi-level working groups are key, are very important. And external communication is equally important because it achieves the trust from the citizens and industry and so, but also because it's important in order to receive interesting or relevant insight from participatory processes. At the same time, when we are conducting these participatory processes, we have to have a very structured participation, well-designed, conducted by a professional team, and also specific. It's very important to work on specific topics in order to get specific outputs. As to capacity building and the support to the municipalities, we have seen that people learn by doing. So practical learning is very important. People have to see where they can apply what they are learning. On the other side, it's not just training. We need to support or have these structures to support because municipalities lack resources and time. So we have to create, I don't know, teams for support, advisory energy or climate advisor, or even offices where these municipalities can find guidance. And finally, peer learning. That's very interesting because you learn from equals, and it's a very important place where you can exchange and learn from each other. And finally, about integrated planning, it's not a document or a tool, it's a culture. So it takes time, and it's vital to define a common language and try to set a common monitoring tool in order to have this integration over time. So very simply put, I want to share with you, to finish with Plan4CET, two sentences. Another one, please. The first one is related to the mentoring program that took place in Navarre. We were discussing about governance, and one of the questions from the participants was, but how do you start with this? No? How do you put this in motion, this collaboration, coordination? And the answer was quite simple. just take the initiative, take the first step. So don't hesitate to knock on a door. And the second one is related to the transition manager course in Italy, which highly expresses how empowering and important this mentoring or transition manager program was. So that being said, both projects has done good and interesting things, but we are still some challenges ahead. There is the question on how to support financially municipalities, how to do the communication, and how to harmonize the data. So what we propose to do to you is to think and be prepared to collaborate in our work cafe that will take place later, where we will discuss and share our learnings and experiences on interesting topics such as support to municipalities, governance, and engagement. And to finish with everything, both of us, we would like to thank you all, and especially our partners for the work done. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Then I would ask you to hold your questions for until the next one. So I introduce from the European Commission, Guus van de Schouw. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Who is team leader for governance, energy union, and simplification in DG. Please, the floor is yours.
This work? Okay, good. No, just a question because I heard last slide, so that's good. Let me just need to know. Yes, okay, good. Not very quick, but okay. Okay, we're going to try it like that. I was supposed to speak first, I think, but they were so kind to put me later. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, right? We really went into the technical details of implementation. I'm going to take a step back and talk a bit about how do we do governance at the EU level. And our main instrument for energy and climate governance is the governance regulation. Quite sure some of you are quite aware of it, but just to quick recap, what did we do? It's a piece of legislation that we introduced in 2018. And it has basically four main objectives. The first objective is to basically provide a framework that allows us to collectively meet our common objectives. So objectives related to greenhouse gas emissions, energy efficiency, renewable energy, electricity inclusivity, but also wider objectives under what we call 5 dimensions of the energy union. The second pillar is that we really wanted to focus on ensuring better regulation. First of all, by really strongly reducing administrative burden. We really rationalized the planning, reporting, and monitoring that was required for energy and climate. And also the second part of better regulation is, of course, making sure that everybody is involved in policymaking. So the governance really put a strong emphasis on introducing multi-level dialogue, regional cooperation, and ownership. The third important pillar was we introduced these national energy and climate plans also to provide certainty to investors, right? Predictability over where member states see their transition going in the next 10 years, and also introducing a midterm update to reflect any changes, to make sure that what's in the plan stays relevant and focuses on the key challenges. And the fourth pillar is we're not just doing this at the European level, we're also looking global. And member states also have a lot of obligations, and the EU as well have a lot of obligations when it comes to reporting on the international level under the climate agreements. And so this was also the tool to make sure that that all was streamlined as well, which of course feeds very much true in our simplification narrative. Then on the right is basically a bit what is the idea. So instead of having very many different plans, we have one comprehensive energy and climate plan currently for the year 2021 to 2030. Then, so that's where the member states set out their plans. Then we have integrated progress reports. So we take stock every 2 years of where we stand. So the member states report to us, and we then monitor that as part of our regular yearly exercise, which is the State of the Energy Union. And so this really replaced 40 to 50 different reporting streams into one coherent whole. So what do we do in this governance process when we make these plans? So first of all, we ask member states to make these draft national plans, right? So they draft these national plans. They need to consult it. They need to make sure that there's a solid analytical basis. And then they send it to us. And what we then do is we assess it. We assess the plans on themselves. So we look, does this look like a credible plan? Is it well structured, well founded? But in particular, we also check it against if collectively they deliver on our objectives, right? In particular, in some areas, we have legally binding requirements on member states, for instance, on them to reduce greenhouse gas emissions under the effort sharing regulations. In other areas, like renewables and energy efficiency, actually, they don't have binding obligations, but we ask them to make a contribution to the EU-wide goal. So what is very important in our assessment is to see if our collective effort stacks up. And based on that, we give recommendations to member states where they should improve their plans. Then half a year later, they submit their final plans, and we again do an assessment. So we check if our collective ambition stacks up, if there are still any shortfalls collectively or in the individual plans. And based on that, we give guidance to member states, and we see if there's a need for additional union measures. And then, of course, once the plans are there, we have implementation, and that's that progress reporting cycle. So again, we will take stock, where are we in progress, and based on that, we'll make recommendations or we take further actions. At this moment, so far, it's gone quite well. So we haven't made recommendations yet on progress, but we see, especially that the challenges in the rest of the decade will become increasingly stronger. So we are keeping a close eye on how that is going. So then a quick overview so that everybody else is aware of what we have been looking at. So here you see very clearly on the bottom the targets that we all collectively set in the EU legislation on the four most important targets. Then what member states put forward in their draft NECPs, and in the middle what is in the final NECPs. And we really see the governance process at work, this iterative process, because we see that there's quite a big gap between the draft NECPs and the targets that we set. And we see that gap is substantially more close in the final NECPs. We still see small gaps, smaller gaps in greenhouse gases and renewables, a bit more of a substantial gap when it comes to energy efficiency. But we really clearly see that this collective iterative process delivers. Also, in particular, as we see, because these are what we did in the midterm updates, so the last 2 years, we have to keep in mind that we very substantially increased the ambition for 2030 halfway through the period. So, of course, when we look at individual member states, we do see quite substantial differences between member states, some overachieving, some being quite far from it. And that basically means, of course, that we, first of all, have to very carefully follow up on that, as I just said, but also that we're already looking forward, and that's where I'll put most of my emphasis, what should be the roles of these NECPs and this governance process for the next decade. So, and before I jump to that, I'll do very quickly a short stock take of our latest stock take. So this is what we analyzed in October this year. And to see, so where do we see the progress, right? So first of all, we have all these new plans. We see very strong reductions in greenhouse gases, continued increases in renewables. We see very strong action has been taken on increasing our energy security following the war in Ukraine. We see also that member states take very strong action on improving permitting of renewables projects, of infrastructure projects. At the same time, we also see some strong gaps. As I said before, on energy efficiency, we do see improvements, but we see that we have to move at least twice as fast towards 2030 to achieve our objectives. We see also some challenges in certain sectors, so especially in heating and cooling and transport. We don't see decarbonization, the introduction of renewables, going as fast as it should be to achieve our objectives. When it comes to financing, we see that a lot of plans still struggle to identify their investment needs and also to develop or at least articulate clear plans on how to attract that finance. And also, finally is in infrastructure. We see that's a very big challenge still to interconnect the market further. And we still see that a lot of member states still fall short on interconnectivity. And we also see, of course, a rather new challenge that we need much faster growth in energy storage. Okay. So I said, like, now we're looking towards the next decade. And it's important to note that the next decade will not be like the previous one. And that means also that before we start talking about what should transition plans look like in the next decade, what should governance look like in the next decade, we should recognize that what are going to be the main drivers of the transition moving forwards. So first and foremost, we're really going to see a shift in the next decade that electricity is becoming more and more important. Now it's at 23%. We expect that by 2040, we need to be at 50% electricity in final demand. There's a lot of things that need to underpin it. That means that we have to be much smarter in our consumption. It means that we need to have the underpinning networks, so smart and flexible grids. It needs, again, that we also need to strengthen all these links between countries so that green energy also can move from one country to another, and that we can make use of that energy as most effective as possible. Because now, of course, we're curtailing a lot of renewable energy that could be put to effective use. Of course, that doesn't mean only technical things. It also means, and that's very much what we're discussing here, to empower consumers. How do on the ground level, how do we empower people to make the necessary transitions individually, but also in communities? And finally, we really need to make sure that the technology is developed in Europe in a safe and effective way. So we then see basically four main building blocks of our new governance, right? So we're revising this governance regulation this year, and basically we see four important things. The first thing is we need a new policy architecture. If you look at the governance now, most targets are basically framed towards 2030, and so it's clear that we need a new framework towards 2040 to have a clear vision point where we're all going. Of course, we have already the climate target that was recently agreed for 2040. And now it is for us to see what is the most effective targets, contributions, objectives that we have to put in place and that we have to develop and track together to support this transition. Because I think one important thing is that we see is the current governance framework is very much aimed at target achievement. And we feel that we need a more flexible framework moving forward because the transition is going to look quite different in different member states. We have all the same high-level objectives, but because of how our economy is structured, challenges that we have, we will need more flexibilities in member states how to get there. And also, we need to put emphasis on all relevant pillars of the transition. So we're not only looking at decarbonization, we're also looking at security, affordability, competitiveness. And we have to all bring this together in these plans in a simple and effective way, because we also want to move away from plans that are 800 pages to something that really provides strategic value. The second pillar is strategic investments. As I said, we have a challenge in identifying investment needs in these plans. And I think everybody recognizes that the investment challenge that we're up against is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And you see here up to 2020, we were talking about 230 billion a year. If we look at this decade, and especially the next decade, we're talking about almost 3 times as much yearly investments. Of course, we already got a proposal for the next financial framework, and there it was very good to see that energy and climate is very well reflected. I think in particular, one of the things is that we see is that the budget for cross-border energy infrastructure that is proposed is very substantial bigger. And what now is for us is very important is to make sure that we increase the coherence and the interlinkages between these future national energy and climate plans and the national, regional, and regional partnership plans that need to be developed on the MFF. Because it's not going to, like now, the NECPs are not going to come with a pot of money. The pot of money is under the MFF. And the pot of money is also very much not just public money, it also has to be private money. So what we need to do is make sure that these plans help to leverage that by identifying clearly these investment needs, by clearly identifying the tools and the methods to do it. And also to make sure that all of this is fully aligned with the other cycles, because it's always very tricky because everything works on different timelines, and we have to find ways how to we align as best as possible so these things can interact with each other. And then we have two more pillars. The first one is simplification. We're not going to get away from that. And simplification does not mean lowering our standards, lowering our ambitions. It just means looking carefully about how do the tools work and how do we make them more effective. As I said, like the original governance really did a huge effort there. We put 46 different things into one integrated plan. But of course, when you look at it, first of all, we introduced new things. We were also bringing together fields for different areas. So just in the implementation, we see a lot of areas where there's still further parts to streamline it and basically get more information with less repetitive work. First of all, that of course means going back to all the legislation and seeing where there's possibilities for streamlining. Secondly, of course, we need to take further digitalization. I mean, the example that I always made, we always say the governance was one of the first pieces of legislation that really had the digitalization of reporting at mind. In 2018, that meant moving from paper submissions to PDFs. So in 2026, we have quite some ideas how we can improve that further. And then the fourth pillar is on cooperation, partnership, first and foremost with the member states, but also very much, of course, with all other levels of governance and citizens. So we see a need to look again about how do we get this cooperation going on the political level, at the technical level. And that also means looking at which elements we can reuse, because we don't want to introduce a lot of new structures. We want to see how can we best engage structures like the Energy Union Task Force that we just established, the regional formats that already exist for cooperation between member states when it comes to network development and such, and also how to engage more effectively bilaterally member states. A very important focus in that cooperation is also going to be, of course, how do we do peer-to-peer exchange and knowledge exchange based on these plans. We see a lot of plans that have very good areas, and by a more direct exchange, we would be able to, of course, also get that reflected in other plans. And the other part is also, we don't want to be that cooperation only to be in the preparation of the plans. It's also very important that we have a more structured dialogue to follow up on the plans and the actions that are in there. And then I wanted to focus a little bit on these the public parts. So as I said, like the governance was one of the first pieces of legislation that really put in place provisions related to public consultation and multi-level dialogue when it comes to preparing these strategic plans. And basically, the important part is, of course, to make sure that there's early engagement on these plans, that they can benefit from knowledge from the bottom, and that gets fed into the plans and also reflects that. Of course, we already said there are also obligations in the governance to make sure that that is done timely and is also accessible. That is the consultation. Then we also have the dialogue. So that's making sure that there is a structured dialogue between level of governments during the preparation, also the implementation of that plan. So these are two very key provisions that we have put in place. And I think we have seen them work. We also see, of course, that the implementation in member states is quite different. So we have to look, of course, how do we build on that? I think one important consideration that we all have to keep in mind, these are member state obligations. Like the governance says to put it in place, it also has to stay at a certain level of high level things that cannot be too prescriptive. In the end, it's the member states that have to transpose that. And that's, of course, also what we then look into. Yeah. And so I wanted to put a little bit of attention on this point, what we have found in the evaluation, because now we're in the process of preparing a new proposal, in particular of preparing impact assessment. So now we're looking at what are the options that we have to improve it. But of course, we built that on an evaluation that we did of the framework, and we published in late 2024. And so what that regulation concluded was that, as I said, the regulation was an important step forward toward more effective public consultation and multi-level governance. But what we have seen is that these processes have not been set up sufficiently early, and were sometimes not sufficiently inclusive. And also the depth of these the multi-level regulations have not always been of sufficient qualities. And what are the reasons behind that? The first thing is that the provisions that we have and the guidance that we have might not have been sufficiently precise. We're talking here about a process that was set up for the first time with very challenging timelines. So a lot had to be done. So we need to look into, okay, how can we improve that moving forward? The second thing is lack of national experience. I said this was one of the first times around. We see it also developing in certain member states, really now established. And that means, of course, that to begin with, the administrative structures and capacity was not necessarily in place. And also the level of support for these national plans and for consultation was at a different level. And a third thing, and that's, I think, also a challenge for us at the European level, is the member states are structured in very different ways, right? So how these obligations and the competences are shared between the different levels changes from member states to member states. And that means that there are coordination challenges that cannot necessarily be addressed at the European level, because we provide, of course, a regulation with common rules for everybody. And as a result, of course, we also saw that reflected after the evaluation in our assessment of the final NECPs, where it really indicated for many member states the need to continue reinforcing this dialogue. So this is something we are looking for in the evaluation and in the system. Of course, also something from the bottom up, very important now that we get into the preparation, because we are now in the preparation. That means that we'll make a proposal hopefully by the end of the year. That means that the legislation will hopefully be in place about 2 years later. But that doesn't mean that we're only going to start working then. I think everybody should get it already in their mind that we will need to make new plans together at all levels for the next decade. So start talking, start engaging, and start building on the expertise that you have. And I wanted to conclude just with a final slide, just to make clear what we are doing at the moment and what you can contribute. So at this moment, we have an open public consultation ongoing for the governance, where we're asking questions about how you see we should improve the framework, how you think it works. So very much welcome to engage with that. We are also following that up with different consultations, different workshops. So yeah, we're really engaging a lot with stakeholders at the moment. Yeah, I hope to see all of your contributions and learnings bring it into this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I had some problem with the microphone. Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. I would ask to move on, because now we have actually a Q&A session. Sorry. So yeah, okay, sorry. But anyway, we don't need to move the presentation any further, thankfully. So basically, I'll now open the floor to questions. To actually the last 3 presentations for the last 3 speakers that we had. We would give the priority to you that are here, but I know that we also have some questions online. So please, any question? Yes.
Thank you. My name is Alexis Hadjibiros from the Samso Energy Academy in Denmark. I have a question for the last speaker, and I would like to focus on 2 things. One is the investments part. If you have some very rough percentages. So the amounts you showed from 240 to 695 billion a year, how much you expect energy efficiency, how much you expect renewable energy, more very, very rough, grids, I don't know, digitalization, transport, and how what could work better than today to mobilize this, because we're clearly in a shortfall of investment. And the second question, if I may, which is like a comment, and I would like to really hear your thoughts and DG Energy thoughts about that, is about the public engagement. Because in the consultation part, in the public acceptance part, because this requires a lot of groundwork at the local level that no one is willing to pay for. So they definitely not the investors. The investors want an area, including the people who live there, that are very ready to accept what they have to propose in their projects. Sometimes they are willing to pay something, but they don't even have the skills or to know how to approach and how to address that. They are like making deals with farmers and behind it, underneath the table, and then everybody gets frustrated because there's no transparency. So there's not this transparent discussion about how we do this. And apart from them, no one else is touching the topic. So it's as everyone is waiting for it to be resolved somehow. And the people like in rural areas or anywhere to just accept these huge investments, which I mean, I'm in favor of, but we need to, this groundwork needs preparation and time and support from both the EU and the national government. So that was a very long question, but if you have some thoughts or if this is a reflection that DG Energy is doing. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. On the finance, I have to disappoint you that I don't have all the numbers by heart. We do break that number down of 690 billion in our impact assessment. So I would particularly advise you to have a look at the impact assessment we did for the 2040 target, which is the most recent one, where that's detailed in quite a bit of detail. I mean, just from the top of my head, what we see, of course, is a couple of things. Like the biggest investments are in two areas. The first one is in energy efficiency, related to everything related to renovations. Also, because what we often see is also the big investments also are related to things that are not purely just energy, but the things around it, right? So renovations of buildings is one. The other thing is in transport, because you buy a whole car, but actually the only part is the engine. So those are the huge amounts where big investments have to be made. But of course, the supporting investments, like for instance in networks, might be smaller, but relatively they might be much bigger, right? Because in some areas you might like, I mean, I don't know what is exactly in transport, but there you might talk it might be 30% higher. But when I was talking about networks, there's a reason why we increased the budget also 5 times at the European level. That's because the investment challenge is not just doubling; it's going 4 or 5 times higher to make these networks ready for the future. So in billion-euro amounts, those might be more limited, but as they're essential for the transition, because if you don't have the network to bring the energy around, they're just as important. And I think the second important part is there, of course, is that there's a very important split, and that also brings a bit into your second question. Is like, yes, public funding is important and EU funding is important, but we also have to take into account that the big effort in the transition, the big financing will have to come from private, from citizens, from companies. And it's really like that we're talking about that's 80-90%, and that's then supported by public money to fill the gaps, the parts that cannot, which are not profitable by themselves, by essential. So I think that's important in mind. Also, and it also is in your second question, right? Because it's very important. I think it's also much more recognized in energy and climate policy and very much developed over the last 15 years. You will see it coming both in reflections like the governance, where we put this in place for these national plans. These are not just national plans, but you need to build them from the level up. You have to have this discussion and not just consult them, and ideally also co-create them. But also in more specific legislation, for instance, what we have been doing on energy communities. We also already heard about the sums and those kind of plans that are for cities. And of course, by putting those kind of things in place, you basically encourage / force, depending on the legislation, cities and member states to put that in place. And yeah, as you say, it's always difficult to, of course, fund those things. That is also why at the EU level, we fund these kind of projects like we were discussing today, because obviously you cannot do that everywhere in the EU, but you try to plant these seeds and you try to build on that, and by this exchange get people engaged, because in the end it's also at the local level, at the national level, is people. Like yes, we are civil servants, we work for an organization, but at the end it's individual people who try to bring it forward, and creating that possibility. So yeah, it's a very challenging thing, and I think what we can do is pay proper attention to it, follow it up closely, see where we can offer the support. I think one of the key considerations for us, of course, is as I said, two big challenges that we saw. Member states were not all ready, and we gave them very little time. I think we are not ready. We already did a lot, and of course we're in a much better situation, so we'll be much earlier to engage. And also in time, we're trying to make sure how can we clarify, simplify our process to also create more breathing room, right? So that we have more time to prepare together.
Thank you. Any other question?
Hello, I'm Tessa from Transition Stories. Thank you for the interesting presentation. But I was wondering, because you said something about the predictability and the financial sustainability, but with the scale back of the CCAP funding, we noticed that in a lot of Belgian local authorities, they're scaling back on the employees that are actually working on the implementation. So how do you think, if there's nobody doing the implementation, it will be even more difficult to find somebody who on a local level can ensure this financial investments, because the employee turnover is already big, and with the scale back of all the funding, how do you see that evolving in the coming years on the local level, if you have some insights?
I mean, I would take it like the local level is probably you're more of an expert than I am, but I think this is a challenge that we're all facing, right? I mean, I think we're all aware that in Europe it's public budgets are under strain. Well, and I would extend that beyond Europe even, and it is a given. You know, we are an aging society. We have an economic growth where it is, and what we do together is, of course, to improve on that. I think the challenge for us is to set the right priorities at all levels, and because we have that internally as well, right? We also have to do more with less, and I think that's focusing on the things that matter. But I think it's also, and I think it was also very clearly mentioned, one of those things is, how do we avoid reinventing the wheel? How do we make sure that we all have common data that we can use? Because a lot of things are also very challenging because we cannot find the right information quickly. And of course, we do have a lot of new tools at our disposal in terms of digitalization. How do we use them? Because I think, yeah, unfortunately, I think the budgets are what the budgets are, and we are faced with exactly the same thing at the European level.
Okay, then we have another question here.
It's more of a help than a question. So I'm actually from Zagreb. Simona has presented our case a bit. So basically a reflection to the first or the second question from the first stint. So what we did, for example, in Zagreb is that we have suggested our mayor to have 0 natural gas usage zones in the city. And then he said, okay, guys, investors are going to kill me if I do this. We cannot do that. So what we did, we came back and we have basically did a lot of calculations behind. And guess what? The square meter price of new build is the same if you use district heating systems, natural gas, or heat pumps. So it's your decision what you do. And I often am criticized when I say that there is money. It's the way how we use it and spend it. And we are talking here about, I mean, these two projects, especially the IN-PLAN, is about spatial planning. Now, you have to have some courage if you're a mayor to do so, but it's how we spend money. It's not on the European Union money, you know, it's also on how we spend our public budgets locally and regionally. It's not only about the European money, and if we only count on that, we know there is not enough, but it's how we spend it. So, you know, we now have 2 zones in the city of Zagreb where we have banned the natural gas. We have the district heating system there as a mandatory. And in the past, what we had in the same trench, district heating pipe and natural gas pipe. And, you know, if you're a building operator or a new build guy, you could choose, okay, I could, you know, hook on to a natural gas pipeline if I want, or I can hook on to a district heating system. You cannot do that anymore. Now you have to mandatory hook on to the district heating system pipe, which, by the way, has to be decarbonized. And you know that if you're a city above 45,000 people, now you have to do the heating and cooling plans. And, you know, this is a bit of a, you know, local and regional perspective. You not always have to wait and, you know, I'm sorry, but what the commission will say, you have the tools already in your pockets. This is the spatial plans. This is why we actually engaged into this project anyway. So.
One more comment, possible? Good morning, Philippe Dumitriou, Director of FEDEREN, the European Federation of Regions and Energy Agencies. We've met a couple of weeks ago. I can't agree more, we can't agree more based on the feedback from our members. Multi-level dialogue didn't work out as well as we hoped for and the Commission hoped for. Yes, might be a bit more detailed. There's always a balance to strike there between how prescriptive the European Commission can be and how much space it leaves to national governments, to regional governments to tailor that. What we can say is that in Brussels, sometimes multi-level governance seems like a very abstract theoretical concept. I'm very happy to have in this room quite a few examples, concrete examples, and on my left, actually, one of the initiators of the Croatian multi-level platform, which supported quite a lot the NECP development, but also a lot of other national planning processes. So what I'm trying to say here is more of a comment. There's expertise, there's plenty of good practices out there. So we look forward in the stakeholder workshops and the consultation to feed that. Yeah, thank you.
I know there is another question here. I think it's the last one.
Thank you. Hi, this is Lea Mihaela representing Energy Cities Romania. We also were one of the supporters of the multi-level governance dialogues in Romania, and we have seen the exact conclusions that you found. That is, there's no experience in organizing such dialogues. There's not too much interaction. They are not systematic. And we were wondering, once again, this is something we stated 2 years ago when the project ended on multi-level governance dialogues. Does the European Commission plan to propose conditions to ensure the quality of these consultations and dialogues? Because it's very important to make sure that this mission is not just on paper. It's sometimes so quickly resolved by the governments of each member state without actually dialoguing with the local level or the regional level. And since there is so much expertise on the ground and frameworks that have been set up through your money, the European money, through the projects that you've financed, why not use it in proposing such conditions to ensure the quality?
Thank you very much and welcome to all. I was not expecting to take the floor, but why not? Well, we are taking into account all the expertise that you are saying. We have the results of all the life plans that the European Commission has founded. And of course, we will try to also take into account the quality of the dialogues also by reporting every 2 years. We have seen that the one member state's report is not always what we need to ensure the quality. So yes, we will try to take all of this into account. We count also on your feedback from the OPC. So we'll take all this into account. Thanks.
Okay, then, well, anyway, you will have a lot of time to discuss in the work cafe because I guess that Gus, you can take back your seat. The Q&A is finished, and we can move on indeed to the next session where you can stretch a bit your legs, let's say, going around, because the next session is the work cafe. So if you are not familiar with the format, the work cafe is, in this case especially, you can, I would ask you to please move the slide. Yeah, it's like 7 tables, 7 topics. So also 7 discussion where you can freely move around because really the objective is to discuss as much as you can and to actually provide inputs, listen in, really engage and maybe provide indeed solution that we can then present in the next session. So the idea here is that you can find the different tables all around. There will be 3 here. No, actually 2 here, 2 in a room that is just in front of this one, and then 2 other topics in the room that is on the right as soon as you go out. And there you can see that there will be flip charts with the topics in which you are interested. The idea again is that you move around. So we would suggest you to visit at least 2 tables so that you can really like take and grasp like ideas from different topics. And the topics, I will repeat them here, like it's a SECAP on the technical aspect, the financial aspect of SECAP. Then we have one on governance, one on capacity building, one on integrating planning, and the last 2, one is on the engagement with citizen, and the second one is on the engagement with policymakers. So I would say that we can, like the moderators of each table will like, let's say, make the discussion, let's say, more engaging, but also they will keep track of time. So they will tell you when to come back here. We will have also a short coffee break between the work cafe session and the presentation. So in general, we will all get back here at 11:20. So now you can, you are free to stand up and just go around.
All of you know very well how they could enhance their capacity to prepare a good project. After that, go to financing, as here is clear needed for openness because financing come into more competitive market. So for smaller municipality, firstly, is a big issue to remain connected to this important source of funding for their strong sustainable project, energy, climate, and other domain important for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was interesting. So I would give the word on the governance, let's say, topic. So Zuhait. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Morning, everyone. Well, governance. Sorry to say, but we are not doing a really good job. What we have seen is that we are lacking on, well, in this aspect, generally in the States. And we have a lot to do. We have seen that generally the governments are making the governance. We are not making the citizens participate in this governance, and neither the private sector. So that's the main thing that we have. And we are talking also about the investments for projects and so on, but we are not seeing that we need people participating and explaining the citizens face-to-face with a coffee or whatever to explain them how they can participate in this energy transition. So we are lacking in this aspect. And also we are not working between institutions. That's another reality. So, well, that's the main picture of what we have right now. And, well, Federico will explain the other aspects.
Yeah, thank you. So very brief, a main challenge is that came out is communication, horizontal communication, so between departments, and vertical communication between levels, and also communication with external stakeholders, so public and business or civic society. And another things I think it's important to highlight that came out is the difference between government and governance. So we see in a lot of municipalities of local authority that what is present is government, not governance. So is we say that governance is the inclusion in the decision-making process of different stakeholder, a significant inclusions. For now, we have just government. So this is something that is challenging. And trust, so related to communication, so trust in the energy transition, but also in the communication of the authorities. And so I think that's it. Okay.
Thank you very much again. Then I would give the word to Sharazad for the capacity building.
Okay, thank you so much. So our exercise was divided into 4 main pillars. The first one is the capacity gaps and priorities. What we identify is that the audience basically express what are their gaps that they found in their local authority. So the first one is the peer-to-peer learning, as well as the personal turnover, the lack of fundings, and the different scientific backgrounds. As for the design and the delivery of capacity buildings, we found that regular in-person meetings are preferred. Tailored strategies are for stakeholders' engagement is also something that emerged during the discussion. As for the challenges that we found, that languages, courses are delivered only in English, and that is a limiting factor for the capacity buildings, and as well as interaction in online trainings, and also to keep the audience interested in those kind of activities. As for the engagement, the strategies preferred are the info sessions and the multi-stakeholders events. Some of the exercise that was stated that basically stakeholder mapping exercise is something that we need to introduce. Continuity planning, which is also linked to the remarkable training for majors. And another aspect of the engagement is basically to give tangible benefits and rewarding systems for the audience. So to keep them during the whole duration of capacity buildings and training. As for the scaling up, we identified that some of the challenges are the lack of unifying framework, and also using and training the organization as a whole instead of just choosing single experts. That can be really beneficial. And also another point was to basically introduce like different technologies, could be like virtual artificial intelligence platforms, let's say, to give, for instance, like for a different, for elderly people, let's say, to help them to imagine future scenario in capacity buildings. So we can also address some of the challenges and give them like these solutions and concrete visioning of what the future could be in this case. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then you can give the microphone to Linnea, who will give us the conclusion on integrated planning. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, we discussed integrated planning, and we got to hear about initiatives from different parts of Europe. We realized that we have similar issues. It's a quite fragmented. We have local level, we have regional level, we have national, and we have also international level, and there can be sometimes conflict of interest. We also have cultural differences between countries, but also between regions and actors that are a part of those of the working groups. But we also discussed that multifunctional working groups, inviting people with different interests, different capacities, and different backgrounds that can help. It might create friction, but it also brings different perspectives to the working group. But as you can see, what we came back to several times was data and the issue of retrieving data and getting access to the data that we need, and that the data that we actually get access to might be, I mean, it's, you get different type of data from different countries and different regions, and so that is that was our biggest the biggest challenge that we faced, and something that we can keep on working with.
Thank you very much. Then, yeah, John, you can go on with governance.
So,
sorry, with engagement with citizens. Sorry.
Finally, as for engagement citizens, the main problem that came in our table was that, as it was said in governance, citizens don't trust the government. I mean, they don't feel attached to what government is doing because they don't feel part of the project. So, sorry. Maybe, okay. So what they have to do is to engage citizens, but bottom up. I mean, they need that direct contact with neighbors or friends that are telling, I have changed my boiler for a heat pump and it's working. Because if the government is saying, you have to put the heat pump, that doesn't work. They need that interaction between communities. So that's difficult, really difficult. That's what we saw. So the participatory process that are being made around different cities, they have to take into account different target groups, because what we saw is that you can target a really big group because always same people is coming to this kind of participatory process. So we have to thought how to engage the people that is not coming to our participatory process, and some best practice that were said, for example, involving citizens through participatory budgets. So some good practices were like giving certain amount of budget to local association or action groups that are promoting local projects, and they are the ones that are deciding what to do with that money. So with these solutions, they are feeling part of the projects and they feel that they have a voice. So that's really important. Another thing we said was that it's really difficult to engage younger generations. So the key for that is starting working with these groups at younger ages in the school through competitions maybe, or that kind of games that start to engage younger people, because there was a feeling that there is no representation of younger people and are the future generation. So it was important. And also it was mentioned that vulnerable groups don't show up to this kind of participatory process because they feel ashamed maybe because of the situations, and actually the actions that are carrying out, they don't show up. So we have to do a reflection and think how we can do this kind of participatory process, but we don't came with a magic solution for engaging citizens. It was difficult, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Then the last but not least, we have engagement with the policymakers this time. So Barbara, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have received very interesting insights in our discussion, and now I try to summarize them. And so at the beginning, we started to make a definition of what a policymaker is. And we received two groups of answers. So the first group is more institutional somehow, because policymakers can be representatives of political parties, starting from the central level, from the central government, and then also regional and provincial and municipal levels. And then a policymaker can be heads of departments in the institutions, and also the high levels of institution, of course. But then we have received another group of answers, which include project managers, because project managers are important in the institution, in the organization, because politicians come and go, because they can change, but project manager stay in the organization, and they develop and they implement the projects. And then another policymaker, other policymakers can be private companies and NGOs, because they can influence policymakers, they can influence their decision, and they can influence where policymakers put the money. Economy is very important in the decisional process. Okay, just a moment, I turn the page. And then another question, which are the main problems on the theme of engagement of policymakers. And so sometimes it's difficult to find a common ground between citizens and policymakers. Sometimes we speak different languages. And sometimes policymakers are not always ready to listen. I hope there are no policymakers in the rooms. And sometimes a problem is the change in political parties, because when the party changes, also the main objectives changes, not always, but it can happen, and this is a problem because it slows down processes. And then sometimes there is not a real focus on the steps after the law is implemented, meaning that so the politicians approved law, but then it's not it's necessary to go on and to reach concrete results with these laws. And this is a difficult. And another problem is that there is less focus, is there is no election. I mean, in the period between one election and the other. Okay, and then the last question for us, how can we involve them? How can we as citizens involve the policymakers? And so one way could be to gathering, protest, collect signatures to demonstrate that some themes are important for citizens. Okay, and engage private sector. Again, economy is very important, and it is important that companies are on the same page with politicians. And it's also important to have a sort of a body, an organization, something between citizens and policymakers. And for example, a small enterprise, a subject which is neutral, it is not affected by the political party, and a subject that can give technical support and that can give concrete answers to politicians. And then we have also spoken about visibility, because we think that for policymakers, visibility is very important. And so it's important to demonstrate that to be involved in projects, in teams like clean energy transition and like integrating plans is also a good way to have a visibility, a good visibility. And that's all, I think. And
thank you very much. Then I think that thank you for all these conclusion from the World Cafe. A big applause to We really hope you enjoyed the format. At least we made you move around. So, I would ask for a little bit of patience and a little bit of help, let's say, for like putting everything back, let's say, where it belongs, because next in line, it's the panel discussion. Yes. Yeah, I need technical support there. Yeah, no. Okay. We need that. Irene, mi metti la slide per piacere? We are about to start again, and I would give yes. Once, yay! Another technical problem solved. So, yeah, we can start again. This time with the panel discussion. I give first of all the word to Jeremy Claro, energy policy expert at ICP, who will be one of the moderator of the panel discussion, together with Sara Picone, project manager at AES, that is the Agenzia per l'Energia e lo Sviluppo Sostenibile. Before giving them the word, you can see that there are 7 panelists, but like 8 chairs, because we will have and the empty chair possibility, where you can come on stage and actually ask your question or be part of the discussion. I let, of course, the moderators to go deeper into this concept, and then we see each other again after the panel discussion. So I give you the mic, and you can introduce the panelists.
Okay, well, the easier is all the panelists, you know who you are, please join us, and we will present you as you face the audience. Okay. So, good morning, still morning, good noon, everyone. It's noon. So, thank you. Well, this is crowded. Perfect. So, our panel today is quite diverse, and I'm very proud of it. So today we will have Lea Mihaela from Energy Cities Romania. We have Miljenko Sedlar from the Northwest Energy Agency in Croatia. We have Göran Gustafsson from the South Energy Agency in Sweden. We have Giovanni Vicentini from Padova, Italy. And we have Enara Rabina from Bidaureta, Navarra, Spain. And Yael to ensure the translation. I'm sorry, I don't have your family name because I didn't put it. You are free to speak. So we will go through a first round of questions to set the stage, and then the discussion will begin, and we want it lively. It won't be a succession of monologues. So we hope you will like it, and you will be welcome to join in the empty chair when we open it. Sarah, please.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. From my side, I'm very happy to be here today. So let's start this discussion, which we really would like to be an open conversation. So I invite you also on my side to please ask your questions so that you can get away with as many take-home messages as possible. So my first question would be for Giovanni Vicentini from the municipality of Padova in Italy. Padova is a city in the northeast of Italy of about 200,000 inhabitants. And so today we have it all about integrated planning. And interestingly enough, Giovanni's job title is territorial and energy planning. So actually, your job title itself suggests that somehow integrated planning is already embedded in Padova's municipality's operation. So my first question to you is, how does this translate into the activities and the daily work that you are taking on and carrying on with your group?
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And so, yeah, I'm a town planner. First of all, then I decided to focus my work on energy and environmental aspects of town planning. And this is something really connected with integration of the spatial plans in general in the cities. Padova at the moment has 4 different spatial plans. We have the town plan, we have the energy plan, which is the climate city contract. Probably other cities here are part of this mission program. We have the green plan, and then we have the public works plan, 5, because we have also the sustainable urban mobility plan. So my work in the municipality is to try to not just overlap them, but include the big projects that are embedded in those plans, one into the other. And the problem is that sometimes we have one plan starting before the others. So we need always to integrate somehow the other plans in order to have everything integrated. I can provide you just an example. For example, we have the new project of the 2 tram lines in our city that will change a lot, probably, the mobility of our city, since we are a medium-sized city. But those tram lines were not expected, planned already in the town plan. And it was an occasion to adapt the town plan, but also at the same time to think about, for example, the introduction of NBS in our city, since we are opening up the streets in like 20 kilometers of our streets. It's a way also to integrate everything, so to put together adaptation, mitigation. We tried also to integrate part of the district heating, just in a small part. That's the problem. And so that's a way we are trying to integrate everything. And my work is to put all the departments managing each one, the different plans together to make them create a dialogue between them, create a common language. Seems easy, but it's quite complicated. Yeah, that's my work substantially. Yeah.
Thank you, Giovanni. We change level to come to Lea. So Lea, you are the managing director of Energy Cities Romania, so Romanian Association of Cities in Transition. So we would like to hear you about your role and action on national energy governance, and the link you make between cities and national level, and how you support alignment between policy making and implementation in these levels.
Thank you. I represent a network of 30 very ambitious local authorities, which are keen on reaching energy and climate goals. We are working at the intersection of local ambition and national policy making. And what we see every day is that cities are ready to lead the energy transition. They move fast, they innovate, they experiment, they deliver. And we take very seriously this mission of ensuring that this local energy does not get lost in translation. It gets into practice. It becomes a national momentum. We see day-to-day gaps between the local and the national level because the actual multi-level dialogue, as I mentioned before, is not active enough. It's not happening at the right pace that the local level acts. It's not systematic, it's not systemic, it's not in order. What we also see is that funding is rarely the problem. The money is there. What lacks is the capacity, the access to technical expertise, the readiness of local level to prepare good, well-documented projects. And it's necessary for us to intervene there to facilitate their access to the expertise that they need, but also with accountability, with responsibility, not to let them just externalize. That's not really the situation. I think it's very important that they build in their capacity, that they start working and developing their strategic documents on their own.
So how do you support these municipalities in doing so?
We try to build capacity, to mentor, to offer hands-on guidance. We try to connect them to the national level and organize the dialogues. But once again, we see that this is a problem. We are facilitating, and the process is not organic in its own means. It should happen on the ground directly without our help.
Yeah.
We try to also make sure that cities have the capacity, the coherence, the trust that they need to transform the plans into action, to transform the vision into practice. We try to make sure that they have a seat at the table, because we usually notice that the national level does not take into account the local level. So this is a great problem. This is a great challenge, because even if you have a great legislation, the practice is what's killing us. So we need cities to have a saying in what the local reality is.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I think very well relating to the comments that you just made, we will now hear the perspective of Regea from Miljenko Sedlar. So Regea is a regional agency for energy and climate, so already integrating these two aspects, but also bridging the regional with the local and the national. So it's in a way a tool to overcome maybe the barrier that was just mentioned here. But the question goes back to the concept of integrated planning. So we heard from the perspective of a municipality how it can be embedded in the daily work of a municipality. But why do you think this is really at the root of climate and energy transition? What is your take on this?
Well, you're right. So we are working somewhere, we call it the glue in between, between the local and regional, national, but also between the EU level as well. But the idea is to try to have the same narratives. Try to, for example, is the biggest pitfall is to come to the cities and municipalities and try to speak different language. You have to start speaking the language they understand. So honestly, what they understand spatial planning, budgets, and their development strategies. And it was mentioned by Giovanni, all the cities have so many different strategies. We had SECAPs, we have climate city contracts. Honestly, those are all that's a nightmare for the cities. It's creating silos, and that's what we see when we speak with the cities. So our vision is honestly in the future for Croatian cities and how we do translate our narratives is to diminish all of those things and just focus on spatial planning, budgets, and development strategies. Full stop. All these other things we see as an analytical support to those things. That's how we see we might end up in killing all those silos we work in. Because it was mentioned, for example, Climate City contract is a great upgrade for the SECAP because it contains investment plan. And investment plans speaks budgets. It speaks how they actually plan their budgets. In the SECAPs, mostly financial departments are not involved. There you have it. You have the gap, and that's why most of the measures from SECAPs, apart from that being a voluntary documents, did never deliver. So honestly, to be very short and pragmatic, for example, for the city of Zagreb, what we see and other cities in Croatia, our narrative is to go into simplification, to go into the direction of if you have a development strategy, you are successful if you have only development strategy. That means you have been able to mainstream energy efficiency, so mitigation and adaptation and resilience into your planning. So the famous mainstreaming has happened. And then obviously you have to have budget, which should be aligned with the EU taxonomy principle. We call it the climate proofing of the budget. And you have to have integrated spatial planning, full stop. This is how we see it, very simple. I mean, simple. It's not that simple, but when our experience is then, when you come to the cities and try to put things like this in place, then you don't have this resistance coming in, because they understand planning, spatial planning. They understand how budgets are derived, and they are, development agencies. They know how to work on development strategies, and special departments work on the sectorial plans, which is fine, but they're not connected. By having these three main things, you can connect it and easily follow. And the biggest, honestly, the biggest way to follow is the money, obviously. So budgets.
Thank you. If I may, just a small, and what do you see as the biggest risk of not being able to do this climate mainstreaming in all the budget and the planning as you?
I just think it's going to be taking more time in different cities. It has to happen. I think it has to happen. It's going to be, somewhere it's going to be faster. In other places, it's going to be slower. It's about the capacity. It's about the ability to understand that this is the way. And that's it. It's about the time, as you know. But I think as soon as we change the narratives, and I think honestly from the entire European perspective now, with having the switch now from, the CO2, for example, we never talk about CO2 anymore. We don't talk about mitigation anymore. We talk about resilience. We talk about economic prosperity through mitigation, because if you talk about CO2, they kick us out of the door. So I think, the capacity and the ability to understand that this is the way is the biggest risk.
Thanks. Yeah, so continuing indeed with the perspective of agencies, we move northern towards Sweden. In Sweden, we have Göran, who is from the Southeast Energy Agency in Skåne. And can you share with us a bit how the momentum for CCAPs has emerged in Sweden in the latest years, and how you are supporting then the municipalities in their pathway towards CCAPs?
Yes, thank you, Sara. Yeah, there is a momentum in Sweden nowadays for CCAP development, and I would give you like the perspective and the background. We first imposed the law of municipal energy planning already during the 1970s. So it's almost 50 years ago, actually. By that time, the focus was to decrease the dependency on imported fuels, not necessarily on fossil fuels, but on imported fuels, which happen to be fossil fuels as well. Later on, during the 90s, we had this decarbonization era. We introduced the dioxide carbon taxation 1991 in Sweden as one of the first countries in the world. A lot of discussions and actions in order to go for decarbonization. Today, we have like a mixture of these two perspectives in the local energy planning, which accounts for decarbonization as well as for energy security and energy preparedness because of things going on in the world. We are talking about electrification today. In Sweden, we have a big issue in the south part of Sweden because almost all people in Sweden are living in the very south part. But the electricity is to a large part produced in the northern part. So we have a distribution challenge from the northern parts to the southern parts. It means we have to be careful when we consume the electricity in the southern part. So it's a big variety about the prices for electricity when you compare the southern parts and the northern parts. It could differ 10 times in the price for 1 kilowatt hour of electricity. So our focus today, especially in the southern part, is electrification and energy security and energy preparedness.
Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. So we've heard from national, regional, city level. Now we will go granular to town level. So Bidaurreta is a rural town, about 200 inhabitants. So in Spain, but half of the 8,000 municipalities in Spain are about that size. So it represents 1.5% of the population, but up to 30% of the territory. So when we see that, we understand what is at stake. And small cities, small towns, but big role to play in the end. So we heard what integrated planning meant for a city like Padova. What does it mean for a town like Bidaurreta?
Yes, first of all, excuse my English is very basic, so Yael will help me if it's necessary. Thank you, Yael. Before answering, I think it's important to explain a little bit the reality of Bidaurreta. Bidaurreta is a very small town in Navarra. We have about 100 inhabitants. It's like a neighborhood in a city, but with all the responsibilities of municipalities. We only have one municipal worker, the secretary, shared with other municipalities. The city council is made of residents, and we combine this role with our normal jobs. Bidaurreta is about 25 kilometers from Pamplona, the big city in Navarra. Most people work in the city, but some families also have small agricultural activities, mainly cherries and nuts. In small towns like Bidaurreta, the main climate-related challenges are adaptation and mobility. Adaptation is very important because of extreme events like heat waves, forest fires, and floods. Floods mainly affect crops in Bidaurreta, no population. Mobility is also a key issue. People depend a lot of private cars to access basic services like food, health, education, culture, leisure, and work. In rural municipalities in Navarra, mobility represents between 70 and 80% of energy consumption per inhabitant. Mitigation is also important, especially through conservation of ecosystems. As you already know, natural ecosystems absorb and store CO2, and this role of mitigation is especially important in rural areas. Other type of agriculture, like organic or regenerative agriculture, can also improve soil absorption. This is a big challenge in rural areas too. For us, the CCAP is the main tool to an holistic approach to adaptation, mitigation, and energy poverty. In Navarra, small towns work with group CCAPs. Our CCAP covers 7 municipalities. Every municipality has their own actions, but we also have group actions. The CCAP are coordinated at regional level with support and co-financing from European projects. This is because small towns don't have enough technical or economic resources. This method guarantees that all small towns have a CCAP. And the CCAP gives a general framework for integrated climate and energy planning, but some actions are not very specific. So we also need some more concrete or sectorial plans. For example, in Bidaurreta, We have a wildfire risk study and priority areas of silvopastoral management at valley level, a sustainable mobility plan also at valley level. Climate and energy are transversal in other plans like the urban plan, care plan, equality plan, age-friendly plan. I think the biggest challenge in a small town is the integration, is that integration depends a lot of the people in the city council. They can change every 4 years. That is why it's important that all citizens have a basic understanding of this integrated vision. Tomorrow, any of them can be mayor.
Thank you. Well, you became officially the radiest town I know, with all these plans and all everything you're doing. Great. You mentioned that Vidaurreta is like a neighborhood size in a city, and I want to ask a very concrete question on how you connect with the other towns in your area. How your communication is structured? Do you have a council? Do you do it through Pamplona? Is it something that you do on your own in between the small towns?
Yes, most of all planning we have is shared with other small municipalities. This is necessary because, yes, we have the tradition to do this. The problems we face don't respect municipal boundaries, so intermunicipality cooperation is essential. For example, in Vidaurreta, we work for 10 years to improve our resilience to forest fires. We revive extensive livestock farming and applied adaptive forest management. But in Jan 2022, Navarra suffered the worst wildfires in his history. There were several fires at the same time during a strong heat wave. In our valley, around 20% of the land burned. We have to evacuate the town and use our tractors to create fire walls because public resources were enough. It was a very traumatic experience, but the fire stopped right in Vidaurreta. Why? I think because of land management. The lesson learned was that land must be managed at valley or territorial scale, not only at municipal scale. Actually, in Navarra, we have 272 municipalities. 227 have already signed the Covenant of Mayors, and 201 have approved group CCAPs.
So maybe we open the floor to...
I would have to bounce on this, a quick question to Milienko and then to Giovanni. Or maybe we can start with Giovanni. When you hear about this city management, spatial management, that is, I guess, very different from what you can have in Padova, how do you relate to this in your way? I don't know exactly if it's very different. It's also interesting to know how to what extent you relate or not.
No, but in Italy, we have a similar situation in Spain. So we have many small and medium-sized municipalities, but less with 5,000 inhabitants. In that case, I think that it's mandatory to have an intermunicipal approach. You don't have other ways to do things like this because you need budget, and usually at this small scale, you don't have the budget. You need capacities, you need the competencies, and you need the support of probably the regional, at least at the regional level. The provincial level in Italy also is useful. And it's a completely different situation compared to the city a city as Padova or bigger, even bigger. So I think you, as government or region, you must foresee two different strategies: one for the smaller municipalities and one for cities. I don't see so much connection between these two strategies. Yeah. They're quite different. Yeah.
Miljenko, any comment on this, on the spatial aspect of what was mentioned, and how you connect it to your situation in Croatia?
It's very similar. Again, we also have this discrepancy of big cities. I mean, we have one big city as a capital, but then we have a couple of layers of like medium-sized cities, smaller cities, and then we have also towns that are like a couple of hundreds or 100 people. So the approach cannot be the same, obviously. So you know, but we dominantly work now with the big cities, but more and more moving towards, I would say, smaller. But I do think that the integration somehow is crucial, especially in terms of, you know, how we combine, for example, in the urban agglomerations, how do we work with these migrations and on daily basis and stuff like that? Because otherwise, you know, it's then we have again spatial silos if we don't do that. We need connectivity, but the approach is not, you know, universal, I would say.
And Göran, would you like to add something from a Swedish perspective? You were mentioning you have maybe one layer less in Sweden.
Yeah. In comparison to at least Italy and Spain, the Swedish administration level are 3 in comparison to your 4 levels. I mean, we miss the provincial level. Or I don't know if we miss it, but we don't have it anyway. So we have 3 levels: national, regional, and municipal level. And it means even though there are some smaller municipalities in Sweden, and by small municipalities we mean 2,000 inhabitants, perhaps, they are responsible for a huge amount of, say, responsibilities. And they have to elaborate a huge amount of strategies and plans. So this problem accounts for Sweden as well, I would say. So we're normally talking about a hierarchy where different strategies and plans are divided into a certain hierarchy in the system of the municipal level. So it's a mess. I totally agree with Miljenko here about the way we have to run in the future.
Thanks for adding your perspective. Is there any question or comment from you? I see a hand raised. You can come on stage. We have an empty chair.
Thank you very much for the experience you brought to the panel. I have a question about the legislative framework, and this question comes from the case of Bidaureda. Does the legislative framework help the integration of plans or the fact that different municipalities join and work together, because it's a big problem. For example, in Italy, you have internal areas, especially in the mountains, very small villages with a lack of services. So you face depopulation, so the growth of population. And of course, the municipal staff is very little, and so challenges are very big. But if I'm not wrong, sometimes the very small, the framework, the legislative framework doesn't support or encourage this joining forces. And so many pilots and lighthouses in Italy told us that they look at best practices of big cities and they struggle to replicate in their context, and sometimes they have to a bit to force the boundaries to find a way to replicate in their context. So could be a question for all the different countries at the panel. Does the national level help the local level in the legislative framework in joining forces and so be more efficient in reaching the targets?
Well, I may start shortly. In a couple of cases, yes, because we have some like regional focus developments, especially in deprived areas and smaller areas that were, I would say, forgotten for some time. So there are special programs for financing and stuff like that. But it's so in a way it does. What I think it's not doing the proper integration of everything, but I think they are waiting for the development of these areas on a higher scale to make these connections. But just one observation, we have good examples of smaller cities that work much better than the bigger city. Very bluntly and plastically said, they said, okay, I just go next door and knock on the door of my colleague there. For example, in the city of Zagreb, you have to write a memo to the other office who will reply after 10 days, weeks, months, I don't know how many, or not. And so we have quite nice examples in Croatia where smaller cities, 10, 20, 30,000 people who don't have huge governance administrations really work nicely. So, and there's a lot of learnings from there, and they don't work in silos. So they kind of by nature have this quicker ability to go faster. They have different issues, but on the governance issues, they are a bit more advanced, I would say.
To be very honest, I have to answer no to your question because the national legislation does not really support this integration in Romania, unfortunately, or not at the moment. The problem is cities do tend to work on their own. We do see at a very small scale that towns, villages tend to correlate. But there's the issue of how to obtain the financing and how to manage it, because it's very difficult in Romania to have one beneficiary and then multiply the financing to other beneficiaries. So once again, to be very honest, I have always looked with high admiration to the Covenant of Mayors signatories, like regions that would help smaller municipalities that would coagulate, integrate visions into one document. And I rarely see that in Romania. I mean, the need is there, the desire is there, but the legal framework does not help.
Yeah, from the Swedish perspective, I would say the municipalities in Sweden are quite individual, so to say. It means they don't have like a history to cooperate on a large, you could say, degree with other municipalities. And the best practice are not related to look at the big cities in Sweden. It's more to, you could say, find similar municipalities which do have the same conditions as you, as an individual municipality, even though it's not maybe the neighboring municipality. It could be located to a totally other part of Sweden, and it's I could say it's one of our objectives when we work to try to find similar municipalities in order to start collaborations between these two similar municipalities, especially when it comes to energy-related issues.
For what concerns Italy, I must say that the intermunicipal approach is an option from under the regulative point of view, but is not sustained, promoted a lot by the government. That's the problem, because we see municipalities with this dimension, probably a little bit higher population, that share just, for example, the police service, not the other services. And rarely we see, for example, intermunicipal spatial plans, even in small municipalities. That's a big problem. And the problem, in my opinion, is also connected to the way the government is funding the municipalities, because we always in Italy fund related to the people living in the municipality, and not related to the dimension of the territory you are managing, which is also a problem when you must, for example, manage a mountain territory. We create a lot of problems related, for example, to extreme events, climate events. And the problems we form there, then we see those in the cities, in the plain areas. So we must probably change the way also we fund and we sustain the small municipalities, provide more money compared to the territory, not only the population.
Yeah, in Navarre, the legal framework is not helping us. Is a barrier actually, but mostly the legal framework that comes from the state. I mean, but in the regional level, yes, we are working on helping municipalities and support municipalities. And I think that two examples of that are, first of all, the way the CCAPs are being managed in Navarre, that a public company is taking care of the support to the municipalities, and that CCAPs have been developed, as Enara said, in group joint CCAPs, so small municipalities can work together, and they have create like a forum for exchange the best practices, because as Joran said, for small municipalities, a city is not an example. So normally an example are other municipalities that are more or less the same scale. Yeah, so they have like once a year, like a regional event about CCAPs, so small municipalities can show their best practices. And also in the CCAPs, the joint CCAPs, they have like dedicated sessions for them to work like in the more comarcal level, to say. And another example, I think that it's now the government of Navarre is working on against depopulation law to help small municipalities to just to facilitate their work, or yeah, to not to, you cannot skip the law, no, but just facilitate them to work with the legal framework.
Just a small reflection. This is going to be crucial when we talk about resilience and adaptation. These connections. I mean, energy is one thing, but climate risks do not know about the local and regional administrative boundaries. And if that is going to be done separately, we are all doomed. It's not going to work properly. So this is I think one of the biggest challenges we will be facing. And we can see examples now. You can see what's been happening lately in south of Italy, what happened in Spain last year, what's happening throughout Europe. So this is going to be an issue, the biggest, I think.
So getting at the core of all this planning instrument, and ultimately also regarding adaptation, is the data issue, as we touched briefly in the previous session. So from your perspective, again, as a city, so maybe easier than for small municipality, but not always the case. How did you deal with the data management issue? How did it help you to think in integrated terms for planning?
So data is really, really, really important for integrated planning. Since we have 5 plans, we have many data related to different topics, and we must put them together. But here, we even have a data management plan in our city. It's quite advanced in that sense. But we have 2 big problems. The first one is related to the privacy issues. So we need the data at least the building level, for many things, particularly when you speak about energy. And always we get the data from the other levels aggregated for the privacy issue. And that's a problem because we need to see the city more in depth to be able to plan and to act. And that's the first problem. And the second one is related to the capacity inside the municipality. So we don't have data analysts in the municipalities because it is quite, it's a new job for sure. And the private sector is giving more money to us compared to us, public. So we don't have inside the municipality someone being able to analyze in an integrated way all this data and then provide to us that we are planners the instruments to plan and then to act. That's the two main issues I see related to data. Of course, then we have also the data availability, data platforms to share data, and we have also problem of protocols to share data. But these first two problems are the bigger for me.
For regions, maybe at regional level or maybe even a national, how do you already support this this lack of let's say data harmonization or data access, single data source that it seems many stakeholders are asking for? What are your activities in that regard at the moment?
Maybe I can start. Well, I would focus now on the adaptation part of the story, maybe on the data. We do a lot of climate proofing exercises, and honestly, when we need data, we ask for from national hydrometeorological services the data, and often it's not enough. So it's not detailed, it's not granular enough for them. So what we are now at the regional level in the position that we are developing data that we need for more detailed analysis and giving it back to national level. And there is a learning here. So what we do now, we discuss with them how to go into the direction of this more granulated data that we need. Because, for example, for the locations, if you analyze the location of one building, they cannot give you data for that. So when they ask me, okay, when you're planning, what do you plan with? I plan with the worst case scenario I can imagine. Because if you're working on a building, on a bridge, on a road, you're working with a 70 years prospect or something like that. And, you know, we're living in the so fast changing climate that if we now plan with lesser parameters, you know, we will be stuck. That's one thing. The big challenge is in adaptation part is the standards. We're still designing on the old obsolete standards, a lot of us. So we are, you know, rainfall amounts per hour, expected durations of heat waves and stuff like that. We don't have it standardized on the EU level, on the national levels, and then on the local levels. So there's a lot of things that we need to still do. And, you know, we are often asked, why are you guys asking when we are tendering something? And we ask the design above national level standards, and they ask, why do you do that? Why are you asking something that is above? Because we know it's not enough. And there was a huge fight with the designers, architects, civil engineers, and everybody. From our perspective,
How do you know it's not enough? Do you present? Is the proof? So you're telling me that the science-based proof you use to say it's not enough?
The science-based is enough, but the normatives and standards that are used in the building codes are not enough. So we actually are using the science-based, like the RCP scenarios 4.5 or 8.5 from the ICCP reports. We use those, for example, when we plan the resilience. And, you know, we are asking them to embed those standards into building codes and everything. Otherwise, whatever we build is not going to be resilient. So, and on the energy data, the progress is, I think, going somewhere, but it's slow. I mean, why don't we have digital twins of our cities? Because we don't have smart metering. We don't have, you know, we have still people going around and manually taking the notes of how much electricity did you consume in certain parts. And how can we talk about digital twins? Because we have still people going to the houses, knocking on the doors. Can I see, please, how much electricity did you spend? So, you know, that's where we are. And in some cities you have it, some you don't. So there is a huge discrepancy, I think, related to that. So
just before your intervention, I mentioned that the chair is empty. So if you have a question or for our panelists or want to intervene, feel free to do so. Please, Leah.
We have been working with various cities to help them build databases just for them to use it, to have a history, to know how to develop strategies that are very applied, very close to reality. We also have tried to make cities use energy responsibles in public buildings, in different services that provide data, just because we don't have access to national data. But once again, we noticed that these are singular cases. It's a fragmented way of doing things. And this is why we lobby at national level for national data sets, for very clear reporting forms, so that the local level can feed in to the national data, collective data that exists. We also try to emphasize how the data management is the backbone of integrated planning, because without the data, cities do plan in the dark, and this is not really smart. We also struggle a lot with distributors, with the service providers, which have access to commercial data and they do not provide it. So we try to create this profile for every municipality. You are the biggest consumer in an area. It's not about separate buildings, separate consumers. You as a municipality are the biggest consumer. So go ahead and negotiate with the distributor, obtain the public data that's there. Even if it has commercial value, it's needed for a city to plan, to have an integrated approach. So I would say that we're very much ahead of this fight. It's not over. I'm pretty sure we would really use the help from the EU level. If it would be mandatory to have access to this data, it would be so much easier.
But it would be difficult to enforce, maybe, if it comes from the EU.
That's true. That's true. But even so, I mean, we need it. It's what Milenko says. It's urgent.
Yeah.
We're not surviving anymore, so we need to enforce it.
Florin?
Sorry. I want to add something new in this domain of access to data, energy data, climate data. What about your thinking regulation from European level? We work a lot in framework of FEDAR network of group, discussing for regulation at European level, free access to energy data, aggregated data at local, regional level. You understand? There are energy data supplier, distributor, other kind. So I feel it's important to establish from European level, coming to national level, free access to data, energy, climate data, to supply all local authorities to understand, to have a good picture where they are. After that, helping another ideas. What you say about proposing, probably for the small municipalities, is strong important. They don't have competencies and not the choice to develop such competencies. For this is important to create probably a regional, local structure in terms of big municipalities with dedicated bodies, with energy agency, able to collect, to have agreement with energy data suppliers, prepare and delivering for local authorities such strong instrument to be able to plan. And not also to plan, but also to evaluate the results, monitoring result of strong project in climate energy. For this, I am very interested to know about your findings in this matter. Thank you.
Who wants to go? Then Leah?
Yes, please. totally agree with previous speakers here. In order to integrate planning, we really need to know where we are standing. Fortunately, in Sweden, we do have access to data, to regional and local. It means for each municipality, we have figures on the use of energy, separated into different categories and to different primary energies, and distribution as well, both on local and regional level. So our work is more or less to visualize these data for local policymakers and for civil servants in the various municipalities in order to find how the local energy system looks like in their municipality. I think it's crucial for us to get to know how the energy is used by different categories of users in order to facilitate planning.
And I would go even further. I mean, I don't think it's just about regulation, which is very, very essential, but I think it's also a matter of education nowadays, because we don't learn about the importance of data in schools, and we need to. We see very oftenly local administrations that don't even have the curiosity to have data on their own assets. They don't know what they administer. They don't know what the territory is about. Have some papers, they have some situations, they have some data, but they don't have the global picture. So I think it's essential that we have education on this matter, because otherwise, just with the regulation, it's going to be imposed, mandatory, but we don't understand the essence of data. And data is not necessary just for planning. It's also important and strategic for monitoring, for seeing the impact. Is the result good enough? Do we need to change anything? So I think it's something that we have to live with having data. Like we kept diaries when we were kids. It's the same thing, but in a different manner.
But it's very interesting that you mentioned that, because in the governance roundtable earlier, we also identified education and more broadly culture as one of the long-term levers to activate, to reinforce multi-level governance. And when I hear you going granular, not only on data, but also it can also be on educational measures and so on, I'm thinking about smaller towns and how it's easier, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, to go granular when you have 181 inhabitants than when you have 200,000. So how do you see it as much as a challenge to go to the individual level than our partners here who deal with thousands or hundreds of thousands of individuals? I can rephrase if.
Yes, the access is more easier. Yeah, it's easier because in small municipalities you have like direct contact with the mayor or mayor and citizens, so everything is easier in this case. Also, you have also the role of the mayor sometimes is also more difficult, because this access is also that the citizens can go to your house and say, I need that, or but for the mayors it's easier to access to the data. But also data is a problem for us because we don't have. I really wanted to ask Joran if you can develop a little more in deep. How can you have access to all the energy data? the energy supplier gives you all this data, or?
It is collected by the National Authority of Statistics in Sweden.
And at what level do you have the data?
National, regional, and municipal level.
But municipal, all the consumption, or in small groups, or in
It
neighborhoods?
is divided into different categories. So you can go to a small municipality, wherever in Sweden you are, and see how much electricity, how much bioenergy is used by the farming sector, for example. So it's really detailed, and it provides us with a basis for discussions on energy-related issues. I would say it's a big fortune that we have a common basic understanding on the situation.
Yeah. And also to evaluate.
To monitor, to discuss actions. Yeah.
Nice.
I just wanted to add that it took us 3 years, but now we can reach each apartment in the city of Zagreb to have consumption of gas, water, electricity, per square meter and everything. So we are getting the data from the providers of the services. But it was a legal nightmare to get that, and not everybody has the access to that data. So only people who are administrative, the admin issues, then you have to sign different, which is normal. But we have now the Energy Atlas, which now really we can go to each and every apartment. So we now have zoning so much easier, and we can do miracles with this data. When we give them out, for example, for the hackathon purposes, young, smart, willing, talented people come and they can do miracles in 24 hours. You just give those data out, you raise it on the level of the neighborhood, and really miracles happen. But it took us, with the electricity providers, gas providers, water utility providers, everybody, it was a 3-year process. It was not a problem of developing a tool or anything, just getting consents from them was the issue.
The problem is that after 3 years, they are already old.
No, it's continuous. So
it's continuous.
No.
Okay.
So, for example, your electricity, water, and gases. We have monthly readings.
Oh wow, super.
So now
and you as energy agency are the only one that can manage those data, or
a few people in the city.
A few people in the city. Nice.
And we can plan.
And what was your leverage on the electricity and water provider? I'm just trying to bounce back of what we were saying earlier. If the provider doesn't want to share the data,
well, the city owns the water utility company. That's one thing.
It helps.
And on the electricity is that they were developing the network, and they also needed some analysis, forecasting, and stuff like that. And they needed connection with the spatial planning and development, how it will go. So it was a hand in hand. You guys give us this, we'll give you an outputs where to, and what do you have to do with your networks. So it's a kind of a ping pong between two companies, but it really is useful. This data is very useful. So
I think in Plan4CET, we saw a role of the intermediate level of the province, because the province was making available data to the small municipalities. So this can also be a space where multi-level governance can help also gathering and collecting data. They had a WebGIS showing the solar potential of all the small municipalities that can be used by all the small municipalities who don't need to do this assessment themselves. Just adding on this. So maybe we go to our final round.
I've been said. Okay. We will. Then we can. I let you lead with this one. That's okay.
So if we look ahead, we heard this morning that we're moving towards this new horizon of 2040. So what do you see as the main challenge ahead to further develop integrated planning in your context? Maybe we start from the small scale and we...
Yes, municipal funding focus on objective and results. A better integration of ecosystem services, improvement into planning for mitigation.
For me, one simple thing, so to transform the voluntary basis plans into mandatory plans, green plans, energy plans.
For me, I think it's something cultural for our municipalities. They work on their own. They are individuals, I would say. They have to change their mind, to change mindset, to cooperate more with electricity net owners, for example, district heating utilities owners, and so on, in order to facilitate the integrated planning.
For me, I would say a shared roadmap across EU, because we have all these tools, all these strategies and all these plans, which tend to become burden when they are in silos, and that can become drivers if they integrate instead of multiplying. So having maybe a common road, a common goal across EU.
For me, it's very simple to create planning systems that are resilient to political changes. Have spatial plans and budgets that are the way is how we plan. Doesn't matter who is next. So that would be.
Right. I'm Daniel from the Tipperary Energy Agency in Ireland. Right now, I'm the only one standing between all of you and your lunch. So, but I have just a quick question, and it could be answered by anybody in the panel. And my question is with reference to scaling. It's a different take at it. As far as institutionalization is concerned, whether the current institutional structure, whether you see from Brussels all the way down or from community all the way up, the current institutional structure has led to a situation wherein most member countries won't touch the 2030 targets, 2040 targets, 2050 targets. That's the reality on the ground. So is it time to maybe commercialize or privatize these large-scale actions by building special purpose vehicles like the way Germany is good at, or building institutions that can scale this action far more? Because I think the current institutional structure is part of the problem as well. So how do you build institutions for the 2030 shortcomes? Maybe Miljenko.
It's an easy one for the end, right? Yes. Honestly, it's a good question, but for example, what we had in IN-PLAN as a good case in Croatia, our ministry, who's in charge for spatial planning, has taken over the IN-PLAN practice, and they are now doing the national level plans top down using the IN-PLAN practice. So upscaling for me is the big issue, because we always innovate different horizon life projects, but it remains somewhere. And for me, it is the idea to have it upscale through different types of funding, being that structural cohesion policy funds, being that private money. But the upscale we are missing. We are missing that on the local, regional, national level. But when it comes to creating these kind of institutions, I'm always for that, honestly, because I think there is a critical mass of knowledge and critical mass of data and everything that is either on the local, regional level that can support the national level. And I think we are partly doing that through multi-level governance exercises that we are working on the NCP platforms and other types of issues that we are trying to work with the national level. But we should also be very careful. They are sensitive to these types of things. So we always use something like we support the national level in the dialogue or something, because if you come and go a bit more harder, they get reluctant, and then you get pushed away. So it's a delicate issue, but I think there is a critical mass of knowledge that could support this action as well. So,
any further comment on scaling up? Nope. Then I will, when coming to an end, I will simply ask you one last quick intervention for each of you. With everything you heard this morning, is there anything that gives you hope? No. You can also say, no, it's a huge mountain and I have no hope. That's fair. It happens.
I can start. Crazy people like us doing these things anyway. So it's you need these crazy people doing these things. Otherwise, you know, no one would do it.
Fora like this.
My hope is to bring these ideas to the citizens in our cities to go out of these kind of meetings that are important for sure, because we must go on with these ideas and we must create new ideas, but then we must bring these ideas to the people, because otherwise we cannot do the change.
I have big hopes but as a regional energy agency, I could say, you know, we are really focusing on technical solutions. We are 15 engineers hired by the Regional Energy Agency of Southern Sweden, but we have no professional financial knowledge. So I think we really need, as a regional energy agency, to stick to these kind of knowledge regarding financing issues.
I guess hope comes from the sparkle that we see in every small working group or a forum like this one. For me personally, with everything that's happening nowadays worldwide, I think it's very important to see how we can so easily connect on this continent. From the very local to regional to national and even EU level, coming from so different backgrounds, from different member states, from different areas of personality or preparation. And even so, in a few hours, we can work together, conclude, build on something and move on, which is something, once again, that we don't see too much these days.
You said hope. I misunderstood. So I think the hope is that all levels start speaking the same language. They don't now. That's it.
You can place your hope in crazy people. That's fine, huh?
I always do.
Okay. Well, I think that was lively enough, at least for my standards. So thank you very much for your participation. Thank you, the audience, for listening and for participating. And thank you to the organization team, to whom I leave the floor for the final.
Yes, so some practical information, let's say, from now to move from now on. So the lunch is on the first floor and is open from 1:30. So yeah, you have time to gather your things and slowly go down. Then yeah, I want to thank you all again, because we had a full room and it's always good to have a full room. We had the discussion, we had a lot of interesting conclusion. There is still a lot of work to do from my understanding. So this means that we go back and we keep working on this topic, and we try to work on new project, let's say, like IN-PLAN and PLAN4CET, to achieve all that we discussed. I also want to give a big thank you to Irene, because she was part of yes, because she was a bit behind everything. So, and to all the partners who indeed like made this final conference a reality, because indeed like we work on this like for the past 4 years or 3 years. So one other thing, we will send all the material by email. You will have photos, you will have a nice video, you will have the final release that we have from these two projects, but also the recordings and the slides. And last but not least, considering that we would like to reuse these lanyards in the next events, it will be amazing if before leaving you can leave them at the table just outside the room. Yeah, I think that's everything. So yes, thank you again for being here as well, and we hope to see you at the next event. So thank you.